My name is Dimitri Broxton. I'm the Senior Director of Education at Museum of the African Diaspora, and this is In the Artist Studio. Each month, join us visiting some of our favorite artists in their studios to see what they're currently working on. We follow all of our artists' talks with an audience Q&A. So if you're with us, look down at the bottom of the Zoom and you'll see the Q&A. If you're on Facebook, please use the comments. Put your questions on there. We promise we'll get to them. Um, and also, please visit Moad's website where you can find out all of our upcoming artists. Also, visit our YouTube channel so that you can see all past talks. This series was made possible by generous donations from the Westridge Foundation, Moad members, and all of you who join us every single week. Thank you so much. And I'm going to read some statements before we dive into our conversation here. Moad remembers that all non-native peoples to this land are settler occupiers, many of us brought against our will. We in the San Francisco Bay Area acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people of this land that we live and work on. We pay our respects to their people, their elders, past, present, and future, and recognize that sovereignty was never ceded. It was never given up. We also acknowledge the continued legacy of systemic racism stemming from the historic inequities of genocide and enslavement that equally requires a process of truth and reconciliation in our nation. We also invite you, if you're joining us to put in the comments where you're joining us from. And if you're not aware of the original inhabitants of your land, you can go to native-land.ca and put in your zip code, and you can find out who was there before and probably still is on your land to this day. I'm thrilled to be joined with my guest today, Nafis White. Nafis is an
Thank
interdisciplinary, multi-hyphenate artist whose recent body of works are created from objects commonly found in beauty supply stores, industrial sites, and the seemingly limitless horizons of our global and political landscapes. Through weaving, hairdressing, sculpture, and installation, White centers the uncanny audacity of self-affirmation and love by means of repetition as a form of change. White is inspired by raw materials and their transformative properties and abilities to tell dynamic stories when in Congress. White's formal training is in sculpture, printmaking, and digital media. She uses concept as anchor and medium as message in her work, moving within conceptual and durational realms. Community engagement, beauty, and the political deep root deep in White's work.
you.
White draws inspiration from the rich diaspora of experiences and traditions of Black beauty and self care built upon centuries old histories of embodied knowledge that honors, celebrates, and values the innovative technology and imagination carried through and passed on by the fingertips of Black people. Through play and continuous exploration, White employs her research on the intricate customs of Victorian hair weaving and mourning traditions and appropriates them into Black hair, beauty products, and African American hairstyling techniques where they were never imagined to take up space and esteem. She exaggerates pattern and scale with keen emphasis beholden on colors and textures to draw viewers into her creative process while simultaneously honoring the resilience and power of a people whose very existence and aesthetics have been the subject of ridicule, persecution, and systemic erasure since their harrowing and iniquitous arrival upon these shores.
Mhm.
White's work is in the permanent collection of the RISD Museum and University of, and oh, sorry, I'm going of RISD Museum, the University of New Mexico Art Museum, and has been exhibited at the DeYoung Museum, the RISD Museum, National Queer Arts Festival, Brown University, the New Museum, Goldsmiths University, Autograph ABP, OXO Tower. Is it OXO or OXO?
I think so.
OXO Tower in London, Overture Center for the Arts Madison, and the Rhode Island School of Design, among many, 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 many others. Nafis, I am so happy to be in conversation with you today.
I am thrilled. I am thrilled, Dimitri. Thank you for having me. This is, kind of a lovely homecoming too, because, back when I was studying art at City College of San Francisco in the earlier part of my career and trajectory, I volunteered at the Museum of the African Diaspora, and that is where I got my wig peeled back. It was, working with you and Rula and Micah Salkind. Like I was surrounded by such remarkable people with such a powerful mission, and it has made a mark and an impression. So it is beautiful to be in your company and in the collective company as well, so thank you.
That is so true. Yeah, I forget that you started off as an intern, but you were so much more
Hmm.
than an intern. You were a force that connected the museum with, with the broader community. I mean, I think you have always been someone who has been about, growing deep roots within the communities that you live, and then maintaining those connections.
Hmm.
Um, I can't say how many people were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this conversation is happening today, that knew you from, when you lived in the Bay and now you're clear on the other side of the country, but people still maintain those connections with you.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure. I miss the Bay. I miss the Bay.
Oh, we miss you too. We miss
Mm.
you too, for sure. I think I just want to, I guess we started to have a little bit of a conversation before, we went live with everyone.
Mhm.
I don't want to pick that back up a little bit. Kind of thinking about this time that we're in. How has this been for you as an artist? I think for so many of the artists that I speak to, it's had positives,
Mhm.
and it's also had negative effects. Now you have had an array of them. I mean, I've seen how many exhibitions you've had, how many programs you've done, how many like public activations that you've done. Um, let's just dive into that and what this last, since 2020 has been like for you.
Wow. 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 Okay. All right. I'm gonna do my best because all of a sudden, like
It's
all
a
of the
lot.
thoughts. Yeah. I mean, but it's been a lot, so we could talk about it. Artistically, oh, I mean, just in terms of humanity. I mean, first of all, I mean, we have seen so much challenge and so much loss, right? And I think of art, kind of in the way that Toni Morrison talks about it, in that, we are kind of the instruments of the world, So like we have a huge responsibility to be out and about and experience and create based on all of those, those truths. And so COVID really was challenging in a lot of ways. For one, I had been married for 17 years and then found myself alone, and
Mm,
weathering this storm when you've had like an anchor for so long, and, family in the way that for so long. And all of a sudden, it's terrifying because you're just like, what is happening? You're like, okay, I've got to, put my, I've got to see things differently. Things are moving differently. The other thing that was a challenge too was just, finances, access to materials, like
mm,
what are we even able to do? You can't even, things are shut down. Can I go? So as a sculptor, I mean, I have quite an array of power tools, so I love to like woodwork, metalwork, like, whatever the concept requires is what I'm going to learn and where I'm going to go and how I'm going to build. But even with that, like I had to train, change kind of how I was moving in those realms. And so, something that was really important to me, I was like, well, what do I have? What do I have immediately? Like thinking again about Tony, I'm like, what do I have now that I can like, like be present, And that was the other thing. I think that this time period was really a gift, for me in a lot of ways, because I was able to really be with myself in a powerful and healing way that I had never been before. So to be able to kind of get comfortable in a way that I had never been, or a way that I was allowing like the cacophony of the busy schedules and the this and the that, to kind of cover over things. And all of a sudden, you were there looking at yourself, you know,
yeah, yeah.
and there's nobody else, so you get a chance to really, address, It's funny too, because my mother and I are reading a book called Learning to Walk in the Dark, and she's actually on here right now. So hello, mom, I love you.
Mom.
Yeah, but learning to walk in the dark is kind of like, is darkness bad? Is lightness good? Like, how do we kind of talk about these things? And I think that, really like moving in that time period was really looking at shadow and light, and really thinking about like how they all how they all exist and where I exist in it. So to answer your question, because that's a real artsy way of like starting off. um but one of the things that I started to do, so part of my coming into self, and part
Mm,
of the strength in the building, up of myself, was about getting out, being courageous, right? Getting out and beginning to traverse the landscape. So all of my work, even right here behind,
yes.
the Oculus. I mean, if you look at any parts of my work, I think you'll see landscape is very much, a piece and part, social landscape, political, that the actual natural landscape. And so for me, it was really important to, take a reading, take the temperature of like what was happening. So I took my camera, and I started photographing. I photographed things where there was like, no cars in the streets. I was photographing buildings. I was photographing like, just sounds were different. The smells were different, So being able to kind of like lock into what had been normal, and then
Mm,
how things had changed now, and how you're able to kind of hear and react and be in a different way. The other thing too is, I was tipping 300 pounds, at a particular time, right? And so I wasn't actually able to move. COVID also created a place where it was like, well, you have to, I made games with myself. I was like, so I have to, I have to go to the place to do the thing. So I'm going to go do the thing, And
yeah.
so also walking. And so when I was getting stronger and stronger, it was like, okay, so that, walk to the end of the block became like, a half mile, became like a mile, became like I was gone for like hours, right?
Wow.
The other thing that I did that was really important, because as my body was, shifting, and as I was, feeling different, eating different, becoming, was I started adorning my body in different ways that were really celebratory. So hence were born like the performative aspect, of the COVID series, really, which is, things that I call affectionately my stunt walks. So I'm just like, you, no, no, no lie. So like dressed to the nines and walk till you done walking,
Mm,
okay? And I mean gowns, I mean like, and whatever it was in my closet, secondhand, this, that, maybe a nice ball gown for a nice occasion. You know what the occasion is right now? Me, and
yeah.
celebrating the fact that I'm alive. So we are gonna have a little walk. And so that became kind of a mainstay. And it was funny because people started reacting to that, like I would see people like, and masked and everything. And, folks would tell me like, when I see you, this is a good omen. When I like, you're inspiring me to like take some time to play. And so that really transformed. Like I really started talking, instead of work as in work, serious,
Mm.
so serious. It's like deep, and it's not to say that I am not incredibly hungry for knowledge, and that I am not like diving in like a research mode and like going for broke, like but
Yes,
play.
yes,
Can we
yes.
look at it with different kind of, because if I look at, a piece like this, whoop, that one,
Hmm,
and
hmm.
I'm like, oh, it's gonna take, it's like the work, let me furrow the brow a little bit more. It's like the work and the, the hours and hours and hours of serious, like, and it's just like, well, why don't we just like let go of all that? And why don't we, like, I don't know, like let embodied knowledge come through? Why don't
Wow.
we let the ancestral come through? Why don't we like light candles and just ask spirit to be the conduit by which the messages come forth? Like, let's travel instead of it being like this other kind of like defined, and why is it defined? Well, it could be, because of the, particular the art world, and like it, but we can talk about it a lot of different ways, and I found talking about play, for me, I think I'm much more of a Mary Poppins kind of character than I am, than I am. I'm just like, oh, which way is the wind blowing? Here we go. It's like, let's do something, new and fantastic. And let's like inspire. maybe there's something I could do that just, touches off something that just like, you know, it
Mm.
becomes like that seed that grows that, allows a different way of walking or gives somebody permission to be themselves in a powerful way. I don't, so yeah, but like kind of moving with a different kind of lexicon, moving with a different, according to, patterns. Like I remember even looking up at the sky and then looking in my closet, I'm like, ooh, all right, what kind of gray is this? All right. And I'm like, all right, so you know what would be perfect with this is a marigold yellow. And so, just like breaking the you know, lines a little bit, breaking the atmosphere, pardon the sirens.
Oh, it's okay.
No,
We're used to it.
I mean,
It's part of city life. It's part of city life. We know.
yeah. Providence, Rhode Island. People are like, "Oh, it's so sleepy." I was like, "Is it? Have you
No.
been here long?" Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I love what you're saying. It sounds like, you've been really taking this time to do this self work, and then
Mm,
it's beautiful to hear that you're also getting this response from people of
mhm,
just like, wow, you walking in yourself and in your highest self is
mhm,
actually having an impact on me. Just seeing you, and I've got
mhm.
to say, I'm not in Providence, Rhode Island, but I am on Instagram all the
Ah!
way over here in Oakland, California. And for folks who don't follow you, I mean, I just, at least several times a week, over this last couple of years, like I took to fit to, part of the shelter in place for me was like finding that connection with other folks and finding your stories on Instagram and what you do and see all of this amazing work that you've done, community work with the printmaking that you were doing,
Oh,
but centered around community and activism,
mhm.
and just even sometimes just the thoughts that you present, what you're going through, what you're reflecting upon, and your well wishes for the rest of the world. I mean, it's like one of those things that I'm just like every time I see you, I'm just like, yes, I feel better about myself, no matter what's going on for me. So, I think it's amazing to see that your work permeates kind of everything in your life, and your work is not just the labor of creation that then goes to the market. It's about this self work and this community work as well.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, disclaimer, by the way. So, in terms of IG, I do. So there are posts and there are stories. Now,
Yes.
we're gonna talk about jazz for a minute. I feel very much like Cornel West at the moment when he talks about writing on the dissonance and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just gonna say this: I love Robert Glasper as a musician, and
Mm.
and a lot of his crew, Chris Dave and all these folks. But Robert Glasper once said about IG, he said, he's like, if you were an artist and you want to reach out to me and say, look at my stuff, he was saying like, make sure that your posts reflect that. And so I felt that. I mean, not that my posts were not about art and art making, but I'm very deliberate about that. Now, the stories are about life. And what you said,
Yes.
right? So that's the disclaimer is you gonna get some real. Like you will see, you will see all the different kind of intersections. And to your point, Dimitri, which I love, some people are just like, oh, so the art is the art. I'm like, no, my life is the art. Like
Yes.
I live an artful existence. The way I cook is the way that I create, is the way that I stomp in the street like Naomi Campbell. You know what I mean? I'm just like, if you're gonna do it, make sure you can do it, like celebrate yourself and celebrate the life that you have as much as you can, because
Hmm.
we have ebbs and flows. We have
Yes.
ebbs and
Yes.
flows, and that's an important part too. Well, I'll get back to that. Oh, but I lost my train of thought.
Oh,
But
you
it's an
were just
artful existence that I live.
yes.
There
Yes.
is no separation. And I'm very clear about that, because it's just me, and that's where I create from. I love to live powerfully and fully and with intention. And as you said, also, like, I'm an activist as well. Like, I'd be the first one rolling up in some places. I'm just like, yo, what we got to
Hmm.
do? You know what I'm saying? Like, during the protests in 2020, was definitely at the forefront of a lot of movements here in Providence. And I tend to be kind of on the periphery of things getting done, like we did all Black Lives Matter, downtown, painted over 300 feet. It's like being part of that,
Hmm.
part of that group. It's like we got to talk about this. Also, we've got to include LGBTQIA people up in here. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Black experience is like so robust. It's
Hmm.
so powerful. It needs to be totally inclusive, in how we move and advocate for each other. So, yeah, so there's a political aspect as well, you know, for me. Yeah,
I
but
love it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So going into your artwork,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to remember if, because yeah, I won't say the year from back when you were
Oh,
working
you
with
can say
Moad
you can
for
say
both
here. I
for
mean,
both
I'm
of us.
silver. We can talk wisdom,
Yes, 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 the wisdom.
Hey,
So that was, what was that? That was nearly 15 years ago, something like that, right?
yeah,
12 to 15 years ago.
it was.
Um, yes, were you creating art at that time? Was,
I was. Yeah.
I was not aware of that at the time.
Well, because I probably didn't have much to show at the time. So like, what had happened was,
Yeah.
I went back to school in my like late 20s, early 30s. I hadn't gotten a bachelor's. I had gone to, I think, 11 community colleges and dropped out. And being in different areas, like, and I can, do the roll call. It was, if there was a medal for like effort, mind you, my father was a Yale PhD, you know what I mean? And
Wow.
my mother too is just like both of them exceptional minds. And I was like, man, so I had a lot of pressure too. But I always, and my parents always instilled this into me, which was, really like, like, where's passion lie?
Hmm.
Where does the
Hmm.
passion lie? Now, they may not have always agreed, my father in particular, about, the realms. I was like, oh, I'm like performance and dance and all of this. And he's like, that's not, that's not really tangible. That's not really bankable, that kind of thing. But so to, flash us back, because, but at that time period, so I went to City College of San Francisco. That was going to be probably the last try I was going to do. And I was like, in histories and anthropologies and English. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to do all the prereqs and like go to the place. And then I took, then I got into art classes, and
Mm.
I was like, woo, all right, so let's do the bare minimum of all this other stuff, because really, like, art history and sculpture and printmaking, like all of these different realms, like I would do live drawing, at the De Young Museum, or the Legion of Honor, like with
Hmm.
a full on class, we would be, following the work of like, I mean, just, like Bernini, like who has you there with charcoal trying to draw stone in the way that Bernini sculpts flesh?
Mm.
Like the gems, the kind of professors that we had, were just out of this world. And so, I do have family members who are artists as well. And I remember my uncle, who is a master printmaker and painter, formerly in the Bay Area, and then taught at RISD for about 2 decades. And he was saying to me, he was like, Nafis, have you ever thought about, like, going into art school? So right around the time that I came to the MOAD was at that time of like, building. I mean, I was just like, still practicing, but I dedicated 3 years to take every kind of class I could. I would be at Dolores Park stone carving alabaster on the weekend.
Wow. No
Yeah, and
way.
people
No
be like,
way.
"What are you doing?" I'm like, "Mind your business." like, I'm making a thing, you know. But so it was, again, and we talked about Malcolm X earlier, just in terms of the kind of way in which I flow, which is, like I will do what needs to be done, for
Hmm.
that fulfillment or to get to the place. So you met me actually at a very pivotal place where my mind was really kind of constructing all of this, and I was beginning to really be seated in cultivating the talent that had always been there. You know what I mean? But I had never really given myself permission to embark on it, probably because my dad was just like,
Yeah, I mean I think that's a common parent thing.
"Mhm,
I'm certainly my parents were just like, "You're not doing that. Well, how are you going to pay your bills?" And as I interview artists, that's a very common thing.
mhm,
It's we encourage you to pursue that. What are you going to do to pay your bills, kind of thing. So
right.
I get that within the context of the world that we live in, and especially where we choose to live. Um, do you remember, this is a question I love to ask, but do you happen to remember like the first piece that you created where it that spark went off and you're just like, yes, this is a path for me? I know that's a tough one.
So I'm gonna put it to you like this. This is how you know I'm an activist. And this is how you know I'm a community person. Is that in my mind, the first thing that comes to mind is like my aunt and uncle, both artists and art, my aunt,
Hmm.
historian and artist, my uncle an artist, and my mother also, like beautiful, like it just is so powerfully talented in drawing and and my father too, in his kind of mathematical mind, but what really kind of inspired me, I mean, I would collect and get beads. I mean, this was when I was really, really young and kind of, was in the Girl Scouts, and like you would go away for jamboree for a little bit and get wooden beads. I mean, I was always about like
Mm.
interested in making pieces for others. I was interested in constructing pieces with like memory wire or like, and I would give away what I would make. Like it was really something about, I like, and I would do that with mixtapes later on. Again,
Yes,
myself, but I'm like,
mixtapes.
like, or yeah, like it's too good. I gotta share this. Let me make that mixtape real quick. But that giving, and never expecting anything back, but rather like, how can I share with what I have? How can I make somebody else's day better? How can I make our connection stronger? I want to let you know that I care or that I love you.
Mm.
Here's how I can do that. And I think that again, that generosity was modeled, definitely by my mother and family. Yeah, and so that I think is like really where all of the kind of like, you know, pay attention to other people. Watch watch how they're doing. Like, are they doing okay? Like, how can you reach
Mm.
out? Sometimes, also the shortest distance between people is laughter. It's like, can I make something that'll, remind people? I have friends to this day who have said, like, hey, I was unpacking this box and I found that pair of earrings that you made me like back when, and it takes me right back.
Wow.
Yeah, so that touches me because it's like you held on to something and like and you have recall. Like objects have
They
meaning,
do,
you
yes.
know, and resonance. Yeah.
Especially when someone that you have an affinity for, that has been a positive force in your life,
Hmm.
is the giver of those objects. I mean, those things are just like, you can give me a penny, but the fact that the penny came from you,
And what
I'm
kind of
gonna
penny?
always remember it, right?
And what kind of penny? My mother
Yeah.
changed how I look at pennies because my mother would collect wheat chief pennies specifically.
uh,
And so I always look. So now to this day, if I ever see one, I always pull it.
wow,
So it
wow.
is. It's those. Yeah. To that point.
That is amazing. Yeah, that just came to my head right there.
I
But
love it.
before I go to start sharing some of your work, I do want to dive back into your history. You started to talk about, your parents as scholars, and you talked about, having an aunt and an uncle who are practicing artists.
Yeah.
Um, the work that you create, the histories, I mean, sorry, the materials that you choose to
Mhm.
create your work from, how do those connect to your personal history, and is your process of creating your work, is it something that is referencing these personal or family histories?
Oh yeah. So we going deep dive now, Dimitri, huh?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Okay. I'm gonna try and like, answer this in a very, because there's so many things coming to mind. But so I'm an adoptee. And so
Ah, like
um
me, woohoo,
hey,
woohoo.
hey, hey, hey,
Adoptees in the.
okay. Yeah, it's important. It's an important note. So, in having my adoptive family, which, I consider them my family, right? Are they did, so much for us. They did so much for us. My brothers are also adopted, but from different families. I also have a
Hmm.
sister who's the natural child of my adoptive parents, right? So within my family, it's like it's so diverse. People are speaking Italian, they're speaking Spanish. It's like this whole beautiful, kind of collage of all of these different experiences, and ways of expression and like dialects and everything is so beautiful. And I've been very lucky, right? So I have family in like Australia and Scotland and England and like, all over. So to be able to have connections with all of those people is really powerful. And then as an adoptee, I was like, well, I need to start finding my family, my birth family,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like for myself, and I think my brothers, I think it was more harmful for them in terms of not having answers or just like kind of losing one's way. And I think, at least for me, there's some times of really just like, really wanting to know or really wanting to meet, really wanting to see. And so a professor of mine at RISD, who is considered an angel, and for people who do not know what angels are in the adoption realm, they are people that help others find their birth family. And so
Mm.
this professor said, I was able to find my parents. Let me help you figure some things out. So I started doing like DNA testing. And at her request, she's like, do this one, cross reference and start building, making connections, start asking questions. So I'll tell you that, like, and this all informs all of this work, behind me.
Wow, no
But
way.
I'm going to get to that, right? So as soon as I started like linking all of this information, I started seeing people that had my eyes
Wow.
or people that had my nose. Like it wasn't like this is your birth mother and this is your birth father, but it was like this is your cousin.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is how close you all are. And I was like, it's looking at someone who's got nearly my face. Like, I mean, you can't see right now with the light, but like I have freckles everywhere and all of, but seeing yourself in someone else is just like, I mean, I can't even describe what that felt like. For me and how powerful. The other thing too that was really important about doing work with hair is that for me, I used to have my head shaved completely off, and
Yes,
so
I remember.
yeah, I know you do.
Love it.
It used to be like, whoo, boom,
And I've got to say, you got the perfect shape. Not everyone can pull that off, but your head
Thank
is
you,
perfectly shaped.
thank you, because honey, I feel like all seasons, boo. Like you gonna
Yes.
get if you gonna get bald, you gonna get it. But I've been growing my hair. It's also like turning silver, so I'm keeping it and like we doing what we doing. I'm 44, y'all. Just saying. Whoop, whoop.
A spring chicken still.
Look, it ain't over till it's over. Right
Right?
now. If I stop doing things, you do, that's when I think you start getting old.
Mm,
Um,
exactly.
right. So for me, also that's aside, but in terms of seeing and being in the world, I have friends who are like, in their 20s and friends who are in their 70s. Like I'm just like, we cast a wide net because we can learn from all of the folks.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So growing out my hair, and my hair is, pretty long now. But the thing of it too was I was like, wanting to connect, wanting to learn about, I mean, I just remember also like going to get my hair done with my grandmother, you know,
Mm,
and my aunt, and like how, like getting cornrows and like sitting there with like other Black women. I was like, damn. I was like, like those first moments of, because generally, I mean, we did not, like, I was not necessarily in very diverse neighborhoods. And so just being around people who looked like me was like so important. So, like, honoring those traditions and kind of telling myself, like, you should know. Like you are worthy of knowing this information. Also, like that care
yes.
and that love that you give yourself, like you can also give that to other people. You can also spend time. So I would do my sister's hair. I would do twists. I got better at that. For me, before I start on these pieces, sometimes I'm like, yo, we got to do Senegalese twists, and we got to, like, that's important to like be able to do that. Can we do it small? Can we do it big? Can we mix hair? The other thing that was really interesting, I mean, I have never really so much like used synthetic hair or given myself permission
Mm,
to play, right? I'm doing that a lot more these days. And all of the hair works that I create are made of synthetic hair because I want to imbue with the intentionality, the power, the love, that it requires, like create these ritual objects in a really, deliberate way.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. And so having hair, I'm gonna tell you a quick aside. Aunt,
I
my
love
aunt,
it.
my aunt commissioned me. Now she had her stepmother's hair, and
Wow.
was it her stepmother and her mother? It was two different women, powerful women in her life, and she gave them both to me in a box, right? But they were separate, and she said, "Nafis, you got to keep them separate. They didn't like each other." And I said, "Okay." So, and as soon now I brought these home because I was just like, so, using real hair. You
It's
are
a
bringing
very different
in,
thing.
baby, you are bringing in, you are bringing in energies, and you're bringing in, yeah, you're just bringing in some other things into the realm, right? So I kind of made peace with this, and I let them know like this is what I'm doing. Da, da, da. So, but as soon as that box was open, I tell you there was presence in my space, right? No longer, because the piece has moved on, and I feel like there is quite a happiness about that. Also, that piece is so dynamic, but the women had different forms. The hair was in different forms, and the hair existed in different places on this overall matrix. And it was just, really incredible. But it also was a great lesson to me about why, we do imbuing ourselves. Because the thing is I am a very, a very powerful, very spiritual, very intentional person. And I only weave. Well, luckily, I'm a very happy person most of the time. So
Uh,
that love and that power, that energy, and that, and I listen to house music when I do it. All, some of my friends who DJ. So it was like the vibes are high, right? And so I wanted to just like push that, push that, push that, push that. And so I can create these realms, this appearing, disappearing, like shifting of tonality and like textures and all of that. I can really allow myself to go where I need to go, which would be a different story if it were, real hair, human hair.
mm.
Yeah.
I love that concept of you thinking about your mindset, but also, oh my gosh, like the act of really like honoring the relationship of these two women, from and actually keeping them separate as they were in real life, throughout the work, but then transforming that and really having this object that can remain forever to really be a symbol of who they were. It's just, oh, it's amazing. And I want to jump into sharing some of your
Let's
work
go.
because,
Let's go. I know.
like I normally do, I will tend to run out of space, out of time. Where do
Okay.
I have this at? Let's see,
Well,
because we're
I am
not going to
happy
do
to,
that.
ebb and flow. We go where we go. But
Oh, we go where
it,
we go for sure.
yeah,
It's a
look,
water sign thing, right?
it really is. Look, Scorpio with like, Leo moon, honey, and Leo, like I'm double Leo with a Scorpio center. But
Wow. Okay. Okay. I'm scared of
okay.
you. No, I'm just kidding.
A lot of people are. I'm not for everybody. That's all right. I'm okay with that. I'm at peace.
No, you are definitely for everyone.
Yeah,
Everyone with some sense.
like that.
This, oh my gosh, this piece. And I think I did a little
Oh,
zoom on this because this piece is just, oh my goodness.
oh, this piece, I can't wait to tell you about this piece because um it's over 8 feet in diameter and it's about 12 inches deep. So the discs that you see there's five of them. The piece, I actually, sometimes I build these pieces in two. This one was so large, I needed to do it in four quadrants.
Wow.
But it's seamless. So you can't see where it ends or begins, it just like, and so those swaths of color that we're seeing that, are kind of more on the flat line there, those are all braids. Um, and then there are thicker braids that kind of move through and incorporate all this color and tonality. So this piece, so the series is called Oculus. They're Oculus if they're the 2 foot diameter here, or they're 8 foot. They're all portals. I call them
Mm,
Oculus because they are all very much portals. This particular piece has a very interesting story to it. It was going to have a different, this one actually debuted at the Shelburne Museum in Vermont, was commissioned to be made for them.
I've got a
Um,
little image of it installed.
yeah, this is actually one of the curators. Yeah. And yeah, it's like standing back. This piece, when you walked into the room, the docents and the staff told me it was the most magnetic because, from far away, people just saw it and like went right to it. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that means that the work is doing what it needs to do, powerfully. Now, this piece, I had a studio assistant, young man, Italian, very sweet, kind young man, who was continually inspired by me, and the reason we worked so well together was because we both vibrated really high and had great conversation. What ended up happening is, there are substructures to this. So I'm going to tell everybody that these are held together entirely by bobby pins. This
No
is, yeah.
way.
So this is a thing that I usually, yeah, this is kind of an ode to the grandmothers. You know what I mean? So, but it's so I build substructures, and paint the substructures black, and then do overlay and use bobby pins. And it's thousands of bobby pins in this. I've never had a piece ever, ever, ever fall apart, ever, ever. Not
That is
even
incredible.
well, because I've had, years now, a few years to test out, how I can really make that work. Now I'll augment the size of the bobby pin. But this young man, he was instructed to paint the, substructure black. And he did that. And I left the room and I came back and he looked at me and he just smiled and and I looked at the piece and I was like, what happened? And he was like, oh, he was like, well, I was just really inspired. And so here's the
Oh my
thing.
goodness.
Here's the
Studio
thing.
assistant getting inspired on your work. I love it.
So,
Not really.
right. We got
That scares me.
complex, Dimitri. So, so this thing is like as somebody who's helping an artist, generally, and when I have helped artists, because I have worked with like Saiko Chung and other
Mm,
people, like, there's like it's a privilege and powerful thing to work with other artists, and you learn so much, especially if they really enjoy that level of sharing and transparency. It is beautiful. Like I'll never forget the gifts that I was given in that way, and I impart those generously to others because I'm not into coveting. I feel like these are, I love to share, and I don't have a scarcity mindset. Anyway, this young man took each of the four sections. Now he did paint them black, but it was at this point in time that I realized that I have to be specific because he painted them black, but he wrote mantras on each one. So when you think about it
wow.
foundationally, on a ritual object of this magnitude, that
Mm,
he wrote his own instructions at the like convergence of the birth of this work, of a black
wow.
woman's work,
Yes,
of
yes,
a
yes.
black woman's ritual work. Because when I do this work, Dimitri, like I cleanse the space, I burn certain things, I pray, in the way that I do, and I get moving in the way that I do. There's a way in which I like to flow with this particular body of work. So when I saw what he had, I couldn't read what he wrote, but I said, what does it say? And he said, love yourself, love your neighbor, love your struggles, love unconditionally. I said, okay, so Hallmark. That's cute. I said it's better than saying some other stuff, but but he knew pretty quickly like there was a major faux pas. And he said, well, what can I do? He's like, something's wrong with this. I said, the colors have to change. It was going to be a piece that was going to be primarily in the spiritual realm. So I really pay attention to color theory around these kinds of things. So it was going to be blues and purples and whites and all of that. And I had all of these supplies and I said, it has to change now. And he was just like,
Mm.
okay. He's like, I'm really sorry. I'll take you there. He's like, are you hungry? I said, yes. He said, where do you want to go? I said, to a black owned business. So,
Mm.
so like, we had dinner, we talked about it, and he said, how can I be of service? I said, well, you can come back to studio and you can erase every mark of yours on this work. And
Wow.
he sanded the piece down for hours, hours. And then I started all over again.
Yeah,
And
yeah, good for you. I mean,
mhm,
that's such an interesting, situation. The fact that you're using hair and someone felt the need to to rearrange it and to change it and to put their own mark on it. It's like, wow, the you missed a major part
Yeah.
of, also your role. Your role is to support and, to help and not actually to take it over. But yeah, so this piece is imbued with even more meaning
It has,
than what
yeah,
we see on the surface.
even more meaning. Yeah. So this is, yeah. And the other thing I should mention, I mean, and he and I, like, we're in good standing, and, he did exactly what he should have done, and I
Hmm.
appreciate and honor that. It also gave me good food for thought and lessons, in how I communicate with others, and specificity, that kind of thing. But I will tell you that when I embark to make works like this, I never map them out. It is all done
Mm,
intuitively. I could draw them, but I remember people saying, like, if you can already see what it is, why would you make it? Because you already know what it's gonna be, you
that's
know?
true. That's
So,
true.
I mean, I think it works for some, right? I mean, for me though, I appreciate just kind of going into it and just in a way like letting go and let God. Like, I know that what needs to happen will, and I know that the labor is intense, and I know the time is going to be long, and I know that the rhythm, we've got to create this rhythm and got to build, and I allow it to become as it needs to. Now there are some pieces where I'm like, yeah, I know what this is gonna be, and we're gonna just do it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sometimes, however that is. We'll see a few of those later on. But yeah, so these are intuitive based. The materials are hair, embodied knowledge, ancestral recall, audacity of survival, and bobby pins.
Oh my gosh, is that what actually goes on the
That's the
materials
material
label?
list. That is
Oh,
what
I
is
love it. I love it.
on. Yeah. I have seen people look at that and then like step back and be like, okay. Yeah.
Now,
So,
now you told me that you're represented by a gallery. Now, how does that play out within, within the gallery world and thinking about,
mhm.
is I'm assuming obviously your gallerist is respectful.
Oh, my gallery. First of all, so I'm represented by Katie Tompkins Projects, and she is just, she's a powerhouse. She has been, on the East Coast for a long time, in business for over 30 years. Yeah. So, I mean, she knows a business,
Mm,
and I think that for me, the thing that I love about our relationship is that we began it many years ago. She was aware of my work. I was aware of her, and we would kind of like do this dance. And it wasn't until later on, that we met up and we were like, okay, so I think this is a good time. Like,
it's a time.
let's take a walk together, and see what we can do together. But we have really good communication. And so, her drive is, just as serious as mine. So, in terms of like, for this, for example, I mean, this piece went, it was picked up by, art handlers. It was like, they built custom boxes for it on site. Like it was just, like no expense was spared. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And then, Katie did a beautiful thing. She was like, let's drive to Vermont. We're going to meet the director of the museum. We're going to, hang out with the curator. Let's talk about art. And then we went and we did that. It was, really beautiful. So she is, she's serious. She's serious about her artists. She's serious about art. She's passionate about it. And so that's what you want in a collaborative, relationship, in a business relationship, you know? Yeah. And also to be able to do what you say. I mean, both of us show
so
up.
critical.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It is. Yeah. So yeah. But if you have any other questions, I mean, let me know,
Yeah,
um,
I also invite folks to put their questions in the chat. I can't see
oh
the chat
yeah.
right
Yeah.
now, but you can put
Yeah.
your questions in the chat and I will
Yeah.
see them at
Yeah.
some point soon.
Yeah. Oh,
um,
woo! State of
yes.
urgency. This okay, so this is an exhibition I curated at Brown University called State of Urgency. In 2020, I was working for an arts organization here in Providence, and I happened to have access to all the art, everything, all the like the CNC cutting, the print shop, all of this stuff. All of it was laying dormant. This was when the protests were really picking up. And I was like, as a Black person in America, printmaking being a democratic process,
Mm.
I have to act like I am not going to sit with these tools. I don't care if it's COVID or not. you know, is like, how can we create a movement here in Providence, Rhode Island, and in Rhode Island, and and build and connect people and like keep people like on the pulse of things that are happening. So what happened was, I mean, Black queer women leading shit is what happened. Sorry. Which is,
No.
I had access. There were some of us, friends, colleagues who knew how to do specific processes. And so what we were able to do in the safety of this space with very established rules
Mhm.
of safety was to create a movement, Dimitri, out of this little shop. Okay. We printed thousands, hand done, offset, letterpress, screen print, merging all of it. And the back wall here is 60 feet wide, and I think like 18 feet tall. And these
Wow.
are all these are all segments of the posters that we created. So it was funny too. It was so wonderful because there were 10 printmakers all together. We called ourselves the Print Like You Give a Damn Collective,
Mm.
because we felt like we gotta this is urgent. Like this is urgent. And so, when there were protests, with George Floyd's murder, like, we went out with, like card tables. We had printed hundreds of these. We had a little wagon, and we set up in the parks, we set up in the street, and just set out like the stacks that you see on the pedestals. There were stacks, and we just said, take what resonates with you and take it everywhere. And what ended up
Mm.
happening was not only were we able to, I mean, our senators were holding these. Every, you
Come on
know,
now.
like, like it was in City Hall, it was in the Capitol, it was like all over the place. And then, the thing that I didn't expect, and mind you, these are also people, not all of them knew how to print, but the people who came forward were the people who said, this is important. And, and I may not be Black, I may not be Latino, but
Mhm.
how can I use my index, in the service of others? And I said, we gonna make this work. So this, was quite a culmination of a lot of energy, and a lot of just a lot of collaboration. If printmaking, that generally you ain't doing it all by yourself,
Yes, yes.
right? So we talk about like scaling and like, it's good to have people to talk about, process with, or troubleshoot, or what if the ink is doing something weird. So, but we were able to do this. We did this, and the thing was, like, my colleagues, some of them were like, I've never seen anything like this come out of this place. And I said, well, look at God. I mean, when you are called in whatever way you are called, do you not show up? Like,
Mm.
this is urgent, So like, yeah, so this is kind of, I formulated this kind of collage way of showing all of the posters in repetition, as this cacophonous, kind of vibration, and then also took footage of the different marches. And so paired the footage of the protests and also the making of the works within the print
Mm.
studio. And then all that was happening. But mind you, no one had access to this gallery because of COVID. So we had to create, in this way, because it's like it's all visual, so from the windows you would see all of it. You could see the posters represented on the pedestals, you could see them all out, you could see the visuals from the large screens. And it was really, I think with the constraints, it was a great challenge, and I think it was really powerfully executed. And I commend, all the folks who came together. I mean, as I tell people, it is a village. This is not a singular effort. You know what I mean? This is not a singular effort.
Oh
It
my
took
gosh,
all
I
of us.
love it.
Yeah,
I
but
love it. And
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, the beautiful thing about this too was, on my stunt walks, or on my, I also
Hmm.
took up
Hmm.
running after Ahmaud Arbery was killed, after he was put down. This is
Wow.
another thing. One of my friends who is a hip hop artist and author named Timum T. West. I met him in Carolina. He is now located in Cincinnati. Powerful brother, does all kinds of things for like youth, HIV, AIDS, like all kinds of stuff. He's amazing. And what, Timum said to me one time is he said, you know what, Nafis, he's like, Black bodies in space is a revolutionary act. And I said, you are the fuck right. So,
Yep.
so with that, so when Ahmaud was killed, I just started occupying space also as a Black woman, in this body in this time, but running, to make sure that there was visibility and to also not be so scared by, the environment that I didn't want to leave anymore. I mean, I was terrified, because I've also been arbitrarily stopped by police. I've actually been stopped by police with, German shepherds and had had some just not good things happen, so you just realize like, oh, right, it's not just the police, it's like also vigilantes and other people. But
Hmm.
my point being is on these runs, what I saw on this wall, I saw across houses all across Rhode Island and all across Providence in particular. You can't be on a street without seeing a few of them.
Mm.
And that made a difference. It changed minds. And I also think that it really inspired people in a beautiful way. And that's part of my calling in my work, you know?
It inspired, again, this is one of those things that I witnessed, just through the beauty of social media. And I'm just like, what is she doing? Whoa, all of these posters,
Uh-huh.
because you also documented the process of you creating them. You
Right.
documented yourself going out and, activating them and giving them away to everyone. And I gotta say, just from this image, I love that the one that's the closest in the foreground, or the second in for the foreground, is Wish a Karen Would. I need that one in my
So
life.
that is one that I did. And we can definitely make that happen. So on it, in the background, it's a 3-process letterpress. So there are a bunch of different layers. And some of it says like comeuppance, or it says like, like just all of these kind of iterations. Like if someone were gonna press you or try you, like
Mm,
things you would just be like, okay, girl, but that's the background, and kind of like the things like is like, saying no. But on the front is like the real Black vernacular, which is like, I wish a Karen would, which
hmm
is really
hmm
like, I wish an MF would,
Yep,
so
exactly.
it's just like the layers on layers. But I got you. I got you. That was that. And I got so much shit for that. Oh my God. So many people were like, don't you think Karens are going to feel bad about that? Like, don't you feel guilty? I was like, nah.
Why?
Yeah. And I was like, and people were like, like really at this organization, there were people who wanted, to see me reprimanded. They wanted to see
Mm,
this process stop. And my
that's
favorite thing is
wild.
like when liberal people are like, we can't have this. It's like, right. That's right. I forgot. I was like, oh, right. It's not just, but
Exactly, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Not the illusion that this is only the right.
Mhm. Right. Because it'd be the left as well. So,
Exactly.
but yes, that one, I was so angry one day. I was like, oh, and the other thing, we had curfew one day. And so there was a guy who did a letterpress. He laid out the blocks that said F white supremacy, right?
Mm, hmm.
And so, but I couldn't leave or else I would be arrested on this particular night. And so I got stuck at the print shop. So what I ended up doing was printing, I think it was like 750, yeah, copies of this fine art print that said F white supremacy over and over and over again. And
Wow.
when dawn hit and I wouldn't be at risk of being arrested, then I could leave. And that was when the
Mm.
stack was like,
The stack is huge.
channel that energy, boo.
Oh
Hmm.
my gosh, I didn't even realize you got stuck. That's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Um, I am speeding along.
I
I don't want to speed along, but I do want to get to all of these
we
pieces
can.
because you also have some amazing ones to show us.
I know, I know,
Um,
I know, I know. Okay, so we're gonna rock with this. So this is a piece. All right. So, I always think it's really important. So, I'm mixed race, absolutely. But I'm also queer. So I think it's also important for people to hear that or see that or know that. Because representation matters.
mhm,
And one of the
mhm.
people whom I love to look like at work, I mean, there's like Felix Gonzalez Torres and like Miguel Gutierrez and like, I mean, there's a pantheon of queer artists who are just like, mwah, like,
Mhm.
wow. And one of the people who really inspire me is Tony Fair. So this is an ode to Tony. It's called All In, after Tony Fair. And all in is really, it's all made of hair baubles. You know, the bobos that we
Yes.
put in our hair.
Knockers. Knockers.
Knockers. That's it, right? We have a million names for them.
Uh-huh.
And so this particular piece, the iteration, the multicolor that you see in on the interior with the white surrounding it, that was how large the piece was initially, which was about 9 feet in diameter. That's what I had been able to compile.
Wow.
This was at Wheaton College. I was their artist in residence. And so they allowed for, like I think like $1,000 in supplies. And I said, I'm friends with the beauty store. And I said, I went to them and I said, y'all, I'm gonna need a lot of these. And they already know if I walk in, they're like, oh, we doing some art. Cool. Like, but all
How
I had
many
to do,
how many of these did you get?
oh God, I did thousands,
I mean, it had to
thousands.
be the truckload.
Thousands, yes. And when I haul this is a big piece to haul. Like it's so vibrant and so fun and so nostalgic and so like there's so much joy with it. And I find that also with Tony's work, when Tony is like working in his studio, he's really like sublimating. He's got like marbles and pennies and kind of doing this assemblage. But like when you look at the pennies, to go back to pennies, it's
Mm.
like, whoa, what's the patina on them? Like what kind of copper colors are we getting? Like what are the dates? Like all of these different things that are talking about like, maybe, times that he was, alive, a very
Mm.
important year, when I think of marbles, I think of games, I think of like, access, I think of like tonality and like, like days that people played outside, like all of these kinds of things. And so, but I like the immediacy of his work. And when I went back after seeing some of his work and just being like, God, like, queer ancestor, like, boss up, like, so cool. And just like, I mean, even using water and dye just to kind of like make like create a lyrical work. I thought when I go back to studio, let me get to look around. And when I came back in, it was like knockers everywhere. It was like bobos. I was like,
Wow.
so let's talk about this. So this is a piece, and it's always a collaborative piece. It's always a piece where it's like many hands. Many hands make light work, but
Mm.
also it allows people to play. The kind of conversations and the amount of laughter that was happening when they were doing this, I think was like therapeutic. You know, I think was therapeutic. And people, as they're building it, I've even had people who actually go into the center of it and just like, you know,
Wow.
hang out. Yeah.
So,
So
so, so, so these are just lying there. They're not
they're
affixed in
just
any way.
No, I don't fix them in any way. I just like there to be the immediacy of shift and change, and that the designs can be, ongoing. I mean, I love it. I was like thinking about like, who is it? Ai Weiwei and like Turbine Hall. I was like, yeah, I want to see this in Turbine Hall. I mean, I'm going to be so let me just put this out. I am going to be showing at the Tate in Turbine Hall. I
Woo!
mean,
No way.
that no, in due time, trust me, and the Virtual Biennale and all
Wow.
of these other things. I mean, that is on the
Yes,
list,
you
but
are. Yes,
it is
call it forward.
I am
Call it.
calling it forward, but but those, yeah, I wanted there to be, a point of, kind of interacting. And what was nice also was I saw people starting to put them in their hair. And also it was nice to see some of the young men put them in their hair,
Mm.
and not be ridiculed, and not be teased for it. You know what I mean? It was like all of a sudden design and play acts in this different way that like, and people give themselves room room. Yeah. And when people go in, I mean, I had an enormous show, 3,000 square feet gallery space, in Cleveland, not too long ago, a few months ago. And this piece was like, like enormous in the space. And, people would come up and tell me like, this is just so joyous. I'm so glad I saw this. I'm so glad I get to experience it. So yeah,
I
it's
love
got so
this. I
much.
love this. And so when it's in the gallery space, are people invited to interact with it? Is
For
that
install, yes. For
okay?
install and
Okay.
maintenance. Yeah. So that is a collaborative, definitely. And people love it. They're just like, when are we
Whoops, I'm
doing this?
sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I,
You're fine.
I, I jumped ahead, but I did because
You
of just
can.
time. I did want to, so folks can see this, but I think this pieces or pieces like this are better seen in real
Yeah.
life. So
Like
this is I'm gonna
you're going to show.
I'm also I'm also gonna turn off my video so folks can focus on you, and I'll just be a
Oh,
voice.
oh.
I will
Okay.
just be a voice here.
Of the picture. Okay. So I should tell, all the wonderful watchers here. First of all, thank you all for being here. It is a treat to be able to share my work with you. It is a treat. It is an honor to be here with the Moad and with Dimitri in this capacity. So thank you for having me. Um, so I work in a lot of different realms. If you look at my website, I love you, Mom. If you look at my website, you'll see a lot of variety of work, right? And one of those types of series is something I call hidden topographies. Hidden topographies is works on paper that are done with hundreds and hundreds of French knots. So I'm going to tilt this so you all can see the thickness, the variant,
Incredible.
and then the backside you know so what I will say about this is that hidden topographies is about kind of like the hair works, right? These are prayers or hopes or just like mantras that I write in cursive. And when I write it in cursive, then I pierce the paper and then I start sewing. It's really important when I'm making these that I don't rip the paper, because
Mm.
not doing this kind of intricate work on paper is not for the faint of heart. Boom. Okay, not for the faint of heart. But it keeps you honest. It keeps you honest. Now, what I will say, I'm going to show a couple different varieties here, is that it's not really about you knowing what the word says, right? It's more for
Mm.
me. It's more for me in that I am like, every time I create one of these little rosettes, every time I create a rosette, I am putting a prayer out there, right? Until I completely obliterate what it was that was said. But am I not manifesting that in all of
Mm.
these beautiful prayers? So these are, I love this series. And in fact, I was talking with Torquaze Dyson about this. And Torquaze was like, "Girl, you need to do one a day." And
Yes, I.
I was like, "Boo, but it takes forever." you know?
You're like, I can't
Um,
do it in a day.
I mean, it takes time, but like all of my work, it's a lot of love, and self-love. I give myself permission to center those kinds of affirmations and bring them into the world, So also it's not just about me, but about joy. So maybe in some ways you look at this and you say, okay, well, I'm seeing like a silver, a white, variants of yellow. So perhaps the word that is being obscured, has a vibrancy that ranges on that. Like she was talking about color theory. So maybe, right, this is a thing, right? So, yeah.
Oh my
The other thing
gosh.
to tell you all is there's a series that's going up at the Worcester Art Museum. Oh, and I'm in great company. My God, I'm so honored. Micheline Thomas, Kara Walker, Byron Kim. It's just like, it's an incredible show that's opening in Worcester, Mass at the Worcester Art Museum on February 19th. And this particular work, which is also a hidden topography work, but this is me using my hair, actually. And you all get to see a little bit behind the scenes.
Mm.
Um, but this is the backside. So I'll like keep my hair when I'm brushing it. I'll keep a ball of it. And then I will continue to I'll hold on to it um until it comes time to do something. So I don't do the rosettes, like the French knots is how I did with the colorful embroidery floss. This I'm just doing knotting through and doing different puffs and kind of exaggerations with the hair. And I love also, like, as I am transitioning my body into middle age, you know, I mean, no shame, right? But you see, the silver strands, also coming in. I mean, this is a very timely and important piece. Now, I will say this. This is one thing I have to say. There have been collectors who have wanted to buy this work, right? This work I would sell without
Yes,
a doubt,
yes.
right? This is my body. This is my
Hmm.
body. This is my energy. And so I have made the choice never to sell works to any institution, because there's something about keeping body parts. And I just
Hmm. Hmm.
really as a Black person, do not want my body. I can work with what I'm given, but I really don't want to have that be like, ooh, we collected da 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 from, it's just like, let's not. Let's just appreciate, You can pay me an
That is a
honorarium.
good
Dope.
call. That's a really good call.
Mhm. I just
You know,
need, yeah. Go ahead, Dimitri.
oh, Alexandra is loving that. Oh, here you go. Let me go
Oh,
back.
very cool. Yeah. So just showing once again. And I just, yeah, the way, and these are just, I sign them, on the back. And I love what you were talking about earlier, Dimitri, of just like, oh, double frame and seeing both sides. A lot of people have asked for that. I don't always give that. I'm just like, look at the front. And people are like, but but how did it happen? I'm like, magic. No, but it's, but I understand also like being human, like we're curious, like, what does it even look like? Like, what the heck? Like how, like, let's, but does that, and a question, this is an art question, is like, does knowing that enhance the work? Does
I
knowing
think it
that enhance
does.
the reading of the work? Does it add? And, these are things that artists can think about. They can decide like, I'm not going to show you. Or they can,
Well, I think the backside of your work is equally beautiful,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, lots of artists who use you know sewing techniques
Mhm.
don't have beautiful backs to their work, so you're often told to cover those up. I'm really curious to know what kind of paper you're using. Is this archival paper?
Yeah, so I tend to use, I mean, as a printmaker, I tend to use, like Stonehenge or things like that. I like paper that is a little meatier,
Mm,
because there's something satisfying about piercing that, it's almost like it just, I'm very sensorial, you know and so as somebody who likes to feel, in all these really powerful ways, for me it's so satisfying to have something that's a little bit thicker, that just releases a little bit, in a really beautiful way. There's a kind of cadence and a kind of rhythm, of following the script and then like
mm.
weaving through. So it's just satisfying. So the answer to that, and I'm giving up some secrets, but it's because it's you. um, but definitely like, yeah, like Stonehenge or Reeves. I mean, definitely a higher
Very
level,
high quality paper.
high
Yes,
quality.
yes.
Yes, high quality. And not to say you don't have to do it. I'm actually doing a series on student loan bills.
Oh
For
my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that are also, right, that are also, these really heartfelt, I was telling my mother about this, heartfelt, like mantras and all of this stuff, but like, pushing it through, some of that, kind of corporate financial chatter,
Hmm.
and I think that, the pandemic also has something to do with that too. It's kind of like, what are the things that are looming for us?
Oh
What
my
do we
gosh, it
have?
is. Until
Amen.
May
Like,
now. Until
yeah,
May
yeah.
now.
Look, that's a whole other thing. I've been having conversations with people about like what enslavement looks like, and like, in terms of like tying you to these things, and but also like, what would you do if you hadn't done it? I mean, we also take risks. I tell people all the time, I'm a betting woman. I always bet on me. You know,
Yes.
but I'm very Malcolm X about my stuff also. Like, I'm
Hmm.
like, by
Hmm.
any means, we'll sort it out, but I got to do the thing, you know? I'm very passionate about it.
So, we're down to the last minute. Remind us what you have coming up.
Wow. Okay. Coming up. I have a show opening with an incredible group of people at the Worcester Art Museum. You can go to Worcester Art Museum and see that. It's a show that's curated by Toby Sison and Nancy Burns. They, I'm forgetting the whole title. It's like it's very descriptive. But anyway, Worcester Art Museum. I have been invited to the New England Triennial, which is at the De Cordova Sculpture Center, so one of the largest sculpture parks in the United States. It is also in Massachusetts. That is opening in April. I have a 7 foot Oculus work that is going to be arriving there. That is the first time that I'm going into a foray of mixed materials and really pushing it in a lot of really exciting new directions. I also have a show coming up in LA, which will be in November, so it's a little bit
My
further.
goodness. Whew.
Yeah, in LA. So that'll be like November through the end of the year, and that'll be at the Iris Project. So those are some of the things that, are kind of percolating, but Mama always got other things on the
So,
burner.
some of the things that we don't know about, are all these on your website? Can we?
Yes. So most of them are. I don't think the one in LA is yet, but all the others are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I
Yeah.
saw today put that into the chat.
Yay.
Www.nafiswhite.com.
Mm,
I love that your website makes sense, because sometimes you're just like, wait, I can't. Artists
yeah.
have these creative names for their websites, and thanks so much today for putting that in there again.
Yes.
Um,
Today.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love being a witness to your beautiful journey, and I'm so excited that to see where you head from here on out.
Oh.
And like someone said at the beginning, you're still very, very young,
Mm,
and so much road ahead. I can't wait to see it all,
mhm.
and to actually connect with you in real life, which I think is coming up soon.
Oh, I can't wait, Dimitri. It
Yes,
is.
yes, we
Yeah.
will be in the
Yeah.
same space very, very soon.
I know that's right. Come on, call it out. Yes.
Call that out. Call
Yeah.
that out. Yeah, because it's been so long. Nafis, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Of course, I know we could have gone much, 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 much longer. Lee, thank you so much as well.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sade, for rocking behind the scenes. Dimitri, you were just a marvelous, marvelous person and a marvelous artist, marvelous educator. Just so it is a thrill to be in conversation with you as well. And
Thinking
congratulations
Erica
to
Demon is
you.
here.
Well, congratulations to you on all your things as well, and to the Moad.
Oh, thank you so much. Just in case anyone joined us late, this conversation will be immediately available on MOAD's Facebook, Museum of the African Diaspora's Facebook, immediately following this, and we will have it on our YouTube channel by this Friday.
Wow.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you in a month.
Okay.
All
Thank
right, be well. Thank you so much. Love you.
you. Bye, everyone.